witnessing everything, your own actions, but also the other person's. And it's then through meditation that you eventually develop detachment, like Buddhist detachment, I mean.
Hello, ladies. Welcome to another episode of Radiant Women. I'm very happy that you're joining me today. I have Karthika Bala with me, and you're going to love our conversation because we're talking about self-love. Now, Karthika is a spiritual and mindfulness coach. She's a Vipassana meditation teacher and a writer. She's a founder of the blog, Wildsoul Bloom, and is the host of podcast Wildsoul Whispers. That is a mouthful, but I love the title. How are you, Karthika?
I'm good. How are you?
I am good, thank you. I'm actually quite excited that you are here because we're going to talk about self-love, which I love talking about. And you're also a Vipassana meditation teacher, which I love Vipassana meditation. So let's just jump straight into it. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us what you do and how did you get to doing what you're doing? And then we'll go into the juicy stuff.
Okay, cool. I'm Sri Lankan, grew up in Canada. I have an art and design background, and through sort of a pretty sudden, this is just all of it in a nutshell for you, so we can get right into it, but through a sudden spiritual awakening, I started to question a lot of things, but it really was the driver for me to seek help and to want to radically change my life from how I have been living up until that point, which led me down a really beautiful path of self-discovery and self-improvement, and ultimately self-love, which is a great segue into what we're talking about. And around the pandemic, like many of us who were fortunate enough to not be hit with the tragedy of it, we got to reevaluate some of how our life looks. And that prompted me to finally take the leap and step into this world of finally becoming certified as a spiritual life coach and mindfulness teacher, as well as training and learning Vipassana, and then becoming a Vipassana meditation teacher, and like diving deep into writing and launching this blog and this podcast, and really stepping into this world. So even like labeling that I'm this and this I think it's interesting for me because I removed myself from all these labels and titles, but you need this for just conversation, but it's really this space that I love being and talking about. Like, I just crave these types of conversations and meeting like-minded souls and kindred spirits who also felt the same way. And so whatever that leads me, however that evolves, I'm totally fine and open to, and I'm just going with the flow. But as long as it's in this space, and I think it will be, I'm totally cool with it.
Okay, I love that. So you said there that you transitioned into this space that you weren't always here. Yeah. What is the space that you were before, and how does it differ to where you are now?
I feel how I was living my life before was not a soul-centered space. It was very much just reacting to everything and being so self-absorbed, thinking that my world was like everything was just happening, which sounds so narcissistic, but it's just that everything was like being targeted to me, and I couldn't see beyond me and my life in terms of also like my suffering. And I think I grew up in such a abusive with abusive relationships in any form, whether
Mm-hmm.
it's family relationships or like friendships, and then it extended to workplace as well, that it was just this dark cloud that I couldn't see anything. And that's all I was hearing were these outside influences. So
Yeah.
they became my own, unfortunately. Like I didn't know anything. I didn't know any better. I didn't have any other perspective, any other example of how I could be treated, how love looks like, of what a healthy relationship is, once again, in any form. And it, ignited my anxiety. It started like my depression and my adjustment disorder and my suicidal ideations, because it was really hard and heartbreaking and painful being there. And I could even remember just my whole, just walking just down the street, everything was just be consumed by that dark cloud.
Wow.
And it wasn't until, unfortunately, my father had to pass, where I was, I mentioned, pushed into this spiritual awakening, where I saw that there was more, and I saw that there was so much beauty, and also there was so much more than me, and that it really gave me such a perspective shift of how infinite everything is, but yet how temporary it all is. And that kind of started me down this path of, oh, what is this space that I'm living in right now? And also, for the first time in my life, I heard and felt like peace, and there was silence in my mind for the first time.
Mm.
And within a few months, it went away, which then prompted me to want to do the work to get it back. And that's sort of how you get into, there's sudden and spontaneous spiritual awakenings, but what everyone can do for themselves is work on gradual spiritual awakenings. And that's by cultivating a spiritual practice and also fostering self-love.
Okay. Wow. What you've just said there in terms of, you mentioned it in the beginning, now sitting in a space of no labels or no attachment, whereas before, as you said, you had this dark cloud over you. You felt a heaviness and that anxiety and things we a lot of us tend to feel. Tell us, what is the process to get from that dark cloud to to me, a very high spiritual awakening of non-attachment, especially when we do have trauma happen in our life. It can be very hard to detach from it, and to look at it as non-personal. And so tell us your process on what happened, and what do you teach your clients, or what do it would teach your clients?
No, that's a great question. And for me, like I said, I had a lot of people around me who were hurt. And that's ultimately what I realized after all of this is, the anger sort of went away, and the resentment, because I'm like, they're also hurt, and that's just how they're reacting. Yeah. But I also had a choice too, which was sort of the first step, is I started to, I would say the first step for people is just to develop the awareness. Mm-hmm. And that's what I started to notice. Even before any real major change, I started to be mindful without even knowing it was mindfulness or awareness or anything, of like, I don't feel good. And I started to then pinpoint when I don't feel good.
Okay.
And at the time, it was all the time, because it was in my environment. It was everyone around me. And when I started to also learn to say no to, if someone asked me to hang out or have dinner or whatever it was, I'm like, oh, I don't feel good after I leave this person or after I spend time in this environment. I can actually just say no. And that was so powerful. Like I had the power to say no. Like there was no latch. I don't know what I was being tethered to, but it was almost like each time I said yes, I felt I had to, but that is not the case. So I would say, start to understand or start to look at your life and figure out where you're the most happy or peaceful or joyful, and where you're not. Like, what is actually bringing you pain? What's triggering you? And those aren't necessarily bad things. They have a lot of great information in them, actually. But you could start to build your awareness there. And for me, that's what it was, but it was very sporadic, meaning because it was a new thing, I felt back into old habits and patterns, and it was just familiar. And something I always say is it's unfortunate when our discomfort and pain and even like toxic relationships, environments become warm blankets, but with thorns. And that's a very, that's a very scary thing and place to be in. But if you could allow yourself to recognize that, then you could then start making actionable goals and steps to remove yourself from those environments or relationships, or maybe bring in some sort of resolution conflict in them if they're worth doing that. And then I would say, if you're having a hard time, seek help, whatever that is, whether it's talking to a personal confidant, therapy, a coach, if there's a counselor at your work, if you are lucky to have that service. Like, it's a part of the healing, and part of getting help is also releasing that energy and not keeping it so secret and hiding it, but allowing it to have a space for someone to receive it, and also share their perspective. Because you're so closed in on your own world that sometimes all you have to hear from somebody else is, hey, you're not doing anything wrong. I understand where you're coming from. Your feelings are totally valid. I would feel the same way. Those are really powerful words during those times. And then I would suggest really developing a spiritual practice, meditation, journaling, getting into things that really that bring you joy, but for yourself, like things that you could do on your own, whether it's like a craft project or reading or writing or even cooking, and then spending time in nature. There's so many healing properties in nature. It really rejuvenates you. And I feel like I've gone on a tangent, so I hope I answered your question.
No, you have. And just to sort of to recap, it is sort of that first step is creating that awareness, and even awareness when we are finding comfort in our pain because it's so familiar, or sort of being okay with pain, because sometimes we can there's a level of tolerance of pain, and when we go outside of that tolerance, we do something quickly to bring us back within that tolerance level, and then we just leave it there. We are still in pain, but it's tolerable, so I'll just keep going. Yes.
And it also becomes almost like that pain is your natural default because of possibly how you grew up or how long you've been living with that pain. So you don't even, it becomes your base level comfort, which is not a good thing. And I want people to know that that is not actually your base level comfort. Your base level comfort is silence, it's peace, it's joy, and it's bliss, and you have the power to get yourself there. But don't try to bring yourself into feeling that discomfort and not running from that and not putting in more distractions, because the only way through is to actually just trek through that forest alone, and you will get on the other side.
Yes. Yeah. And I just want to tell me there, you said trek through that forest alone. I know we have the strength to do it alone, but do we have to do it alone? Can we get a guide?
No, that's a really good question. And when I mean alone is even if you have a guide, even if you have a therapist or a counselor, or even if you have like, and you're lucky and you're fortunate enough to have like a really great confidant who's there for you, you still have to do the work alone.
Yes. Yeah.
You could talk to somebody, but at the end of the day, your head is on that pillow, and it's just you and your thoughts.
Yeah.
And you can't. It's just not feasible to speak in or to have a therapist for every hour of the day. So after you do have your sessions, if you're fortunate enough to, those other 23 hours is where the work really happens. Yeah. Is where you break the habits. If you establish routines, you start new thinking modes of thinking, breaking old programmings. So that's what I mean. Like, you can come into the forest with a map and a compass, but you still got to navigate it all on your own.
Right. So I'm understanding now. So it's us that, or the, ourselves that have to do the work. No one else can do it for us. We could certainly get guides and, as you said, map compasses to help us form a path that, someone else has walked that path and they're telling us, giving us steps on how to do it. But we're the ones that have to take one foot in front of the other and actually move away from wherever it is that, that we are now. I was talking to a client the other day, and she was new and she just sort of started, and she came in really frustrated, and she was like, you know what, I just want in my life someone that is there for me, that cares for me, that like all the things that we want, someone that listens to me, that loves me unconditionally, and all of these things. And the question that I asked her is, how are you with doing those things to yourself?
That's a good question.
Yes. So, and that leads me into that self-care. Imagine this world, to anyone that's listening, where we are there for ourselves at any point that we need it. And we are giving ourselves whatever it is we need, whether it's nutrition, whether it's exercise, whether it's quietness, whether meditation, whatever it is that our body needs. And we're so in tune with it, and that we know what it needs, and then we give it whatever it is that it needs. Where would that lead us? How different would we be? How different would our day be? How different would we live our life? So with that leads us into self-care. So please tell us, I hear a lot, people going, I'm going to the hairdresser, that's self-care. Yes, it is, but that is not the care that's going to make you feel alive. It will for a moment, and it's that short-term satisfaction. But how do we get to that self-care where it's long-term gratification?
It could start even simple as like how we speak to ourselves and address ourselves, and what we think about. Like, that is self-care. When you say, like, you're going to be okay, you're doing a good job, that's the first sign of it. Like, how many of us go, oh, such an idiot, or like, oh yeah, man, I really messed up, or there's all that's it's so small, but if we could just switch it there, that's a great start. Or I was just talking to someone, and they were recognizing the state that we're in. They were recognizing that they were in a depressive episode, that that they get it intensely before a certain time period. And they were just taking steps to make sure it wasn't as bad as it could be. And I just said, wait, let me just witness all of that amazing awareness you have, but also like the self-care and like preventative measures you're doing for yourself. So that's a great example as well. It's ultimately what you were talking about, like the care that we could actually do for ourselves to get us in a better, positive, and more healthy place, no matter how that looks like. And it can be as small as, but they're not small, they're huge things that you're doing, as what you're saying to yourself in your head, as what you're, how encouraging you are for yourself. But you also touched on something as like a really important aspects as well, and it's your diet, it's your how much movement you're getting. And it's not like you have to do this intense HIIT class, but even just going out for a walk for 20 or 15 minutes, it's amazing. Or when everyone talks about clean eating and balanced diet, those are all so we don't need to go into the food groups, but I will say those times when you do allow yourself to maybe have something that you shouldn't, and we know the price that we're going to pay, we're going to feel a certain way, but that also prevents us from, it gives us energy. So if we don't have the energy to go out for that walk, if we don't have that energy to meditate or to even do our daily productive tasks, all of our mid work, it could start affecting how we think and how we think about ourselves. So it's all interconnected, and something I really say is it's creating a clean and healthy habitat for your soul to live in ultimately. Because if they're not all working at their optimal, then it creates almost like this thick wall and the soul can't penetrate through. But if you clear it away with movement, daily movement, with eating, once again, it doesn't have to be super clean, but having, giving yourself really wholesome and like nutrients, like even just like water and like fruits and vegetables. All of it is, like you say, it's that self-care that's on a deeper level that has lasting impact, more than going to the salon for an hour. And we're not saying you shouldn't go like that. That's fun, I'm sure, to do, but it's something that has actual lasting impact on the way you think and how you feel. And then ultimately those two things have a direct impact on your actions. And then your actions and your behavior then dictate how your life is going to look.
Yeah. So basically what you're saying is kind of like what we get out is what we put in. So in terms of our energy, in terms of our tolerance, and what our body gives us is what we sort of give it back, or what we put into it, whether it's thoughts or whether it's nutrition or whether it's exercise. So tell me then, or tell us, all of us, so we're talking about self-care, and we are aware, so we're talking about what we give to ourselves. That's really what we can give. That's how much energy we have to give to others as well, and or to whatever it is, whether it's our children and things like that. But before that, we were talking about trauma. And tell me, how does self-care help with healing those emotional wounds and healing whatever it is? So treading that path that we were talking about, out of comfortable pain to that silence and that bliss and joy. How does self-care, and I just want to add into there something that we haven't covered, that part of self-care is very much meditation. So how does self-care and meditation help us to tread that path of joy and peace and freedom?
First, I just want to preface by saying it is a long road, and it's almost like a road that never ends, and you just have to commit to be on it. But you will be rewarded, and those rewards are sort of what we say, like the joy and the silence, and just the more peace and the confidence, and ultimately the self-love that you'll feel. But it at first, though, it is a little trepidatious, and you will be discomfortable. I mean, you will be uncomfortable. There's a lot of discomfort in it. And you mentioned something, a lot of people kind of maybe shy away from that or don't like to sit in it, but it's important because there's so much valuable information in that pain and in our trauma and in everything that has happened, that because those become our personality barriers and blocks in our lives. So when we bring more light into them and take them out of the dark, we can see them clearly, and we can see them with fresh eyes, and we can and then when you work on meditation and mindfulness, you then learn to examine them from a fresh perspective, but also a perspective that isn't attached to any emotion or resentment or anger. It's almost just a clean observer state of you're witnessing everything, your own actions, but also the other person's. And it's then through meditation that you eventually develop detachment, like Buddhist detachment, I mean. And that for me was such a saving grace, and it still continues to be. And it's something that I still have to work on to be in that state. Don't get me wrong, but it's so crucial. But there's still a lot of, I was developing mindfulness and detachment and meditation, but there's still a lot of healing I needed to do. And so I want a lot of people to know you can develop a spiritual practice, and, and that's beautiful and so necessary. But we also need to actually address and look straight in the eye of the things and possibly the people that have hurt us. And maybe not directly, but like metaphorically through like journaling, or through talking to a counselor or a therapist or a guide or whoever it is, or even yourself, of like, what hurt me? Who hurt me? How did they hurt me? Where are they coming from? How did it make me feel? And how did that impact my life? And what is what's the narrative that I'm bringing throughout my life since that moment? And what is the belief I feel because of that? And there's a lot of something I do, inner child healing, that you can do that's really important, because the formation of that pain, if it happened from childhood to even adolescence, is so impactful, and we carry that on. We're behaving through our triggers as we've done since we were like 5 years old, but it doesn't have to be that way. And self-care can really shed those layers, but also integrate those layers, because there's also those tactics that we learn, like were there to keep us safe. They were in survival mode. So there are things in there that actually could be assets, right? So it's like, how can we utilize the assets by also shedding the parts that aren't really helping us to move forward, that are actually making us more fearful. So it's using what we learned to push us forward, but and not from a fear based. And that's what's really important. And self-care allows you and shows you. Sorry, I'm trying to get this right, but it shows you that it really starts with you.
Yes.
The path of like whatever life you want to live. And it doesn't mean like you're on some yacht, but maybe you just actually want to live your day to day with more peace. And it really just starts with you, and you have the power and strength to do all that. And you are the one to forgive yourself and to heal yourself, and not give power to everything that has hurt you or anyone like that. And that's something I certainly did. I dragged it on, and I gave it so much power, and I was putting so many people on a pedestal where I was like down below, and that shouldn't be it. And it also shouldn't be where I'm ahead as well. Like that we're all equal, and no one is better or worse. And so self-care, I think, gives you that drive to want to heal, want to get better, and want a better life. And it's a motivator as well.
Yeah, I love that. That is so. I love this conversation because it clears up this idea that self-care is selfish. Self-care is external, so it's about caring externally about ourselves, and how impactful, how powerful it actually is. So, we're talking about healing those deep emotional wounds, inner child things and things like that. We're talking about even when you are sitting with the pain and creating then that detachment or having non-attachment, that allows us to forgive and to let go, because we feel the pain because we anchor ourselves to that situation and we don't let go. And when we go through the process of self-care, and what you said, seeking that help, it gives us permission and it gives us tool to let go. It's no longer something that you need to desperately hold on to, because at some point it was a part of you. It was part of your story. It's part of your journey. It was, especially if it happened in childhood, it was something absolutely necessary, as you said, to keep you safe. But it's in adulthood, it's no longer something that you need. And there is different ways to do things. So I love this conversation. So tell us, if people want to reach out to you, whether about self-care or about meditation, or just in general to practice more of that spirituality, more of that stillness, more of that detachment and that healing, how do you work with your clients, or how do you work with people, and where can they find you?
Yeah, so I offer coaching sessions that are more free flowing. So we work on people's own targeted goals, and I incorporate my own practices in there because I think they're just beneficial. They're just universal, that anyone can benefit from. So be it a relationship or career, whatever it is. But through that, I still integrate all of the wisdom and learning and principles and almost modules and format from my 12-week spiritual fitness course. And that's not just a course, it's a guide and it's a lifestyle and it's a framework. And what that course is about is really giving people the tools to be self-sufficient, to help them break old personality defaults and create new personality defaults, and establish a routine, but also heal their inner child, heal their adolescent self, and really deepen into their soul. So it starts with healing, which is the first module, and the second one is integrate. So we start integrating personalities and things like that, and the third one is deepening into your soul. And throughout that 12 weeks, we slowly start crafting very gradually a spiritual practice for them, from 5 minutes a day meditation to the end they'll get 30 minutes a day. And then also from journaling to gratitude list. So there is homework, and that's what I talked about. You can get help for sure, but you still have to trek that forest alone.
Yes.
I'm going to give you all that tools. I'm going to pack your backpack for you and give you all your snacks, but you still have to walk there alone. So, but that's really structured, and that's why I say I have free-flowing sessions, because maybe someone's not ready for that structured format, and I get that. And you could find all that at wildsoulbloom.com. And over there, I also have a weekly blog. If you're not ready if you're not ready to seek help, some people, it's an intimate relationship.
Yeah.
And if you want to get to know me better, if you just are really interested in the content, you don't really want help, that's cool. But it is good it is good information. It's good conversation that I personally have been craving. So so you could subscribe to the blog and receive a free spiritual fitness guide. So you could get started all on your own with the free ebook. And I'm over at Instagram, Pinterest, and Facebook, and it's at Wildsoul Bloom. And a weekly blog called Wildsoul Whispers, and it's available wherever you listen.
Wow, that's beautiful. So the links and all of that stuff will be in description wherever it is, or in show notes wherever it is you're listening to this. Thank you so much for coming on, and thank you for having this beautiful conversation that is beyond the general information, you know, for us to really understand what self-care is, what spirituality is, and it's really, I hear so often different stories about spirituality, and to me, spirituality is starting with the self. I feel like once I master that, then I can move on to other things, but I don't think I'll ever master the self. So.
Yeah, well, it's a lifelong journey. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even beyond that, we're still doing that if whatever you believe in. But something I will end off by saying is it's not selfish. And if you care about the people in your life, if you care about the people in your life, whether it's your spouse, your children, or your family, your friends, whatever it is, and you want to show up as the best version of yourself for them, you have to start with yourself, because you want to make sure that you're giving all that love to yourself and use yourself as an example, and then extend it further to your outside world. But create an inner sanctuary for yourself, and you'll take that inner sanctuary wherever you go. And you're right, there's so much information out there about spirituality, and often the thing I hear about is people are talking about like these amazing teachings and wisdom and the philosophy, but people want to know about also the how-to. Yes. So, you know, what I teach and over at wildsoulbloom.com and Wildsoul Whispers and the blog and the ebook and the courses, I give you that framework, but ultimately it's up to you to do that work. So consistency is everything, and commit to yourself. Make yourself a priority.
Yes, absolutely. Again, like imagine if you were to show up for yourself every day in whatever capacity you needed, how different your life would be, how different you would impact those around you, how different your business, wherever it is you're doing, would be if you just did that one thing, which is, it really doesn't take that much. It doesn't really cost that much. You know, we're talking something so simple, but so necessary. So again, thank you for coming on, and thank you for this beautiful conversation. And yeah, guys, if you wanted to get in touch, please use any of the links below, and then you can get in touch with KR.
Thank you for having me. I loved it. It was a great conversation.
Bye.
Bye.